people who have accidentally killed someone. What went wrong? My dad is a garbage truck driver in a major city. A few years ago, they found a homeless man dead and crushed in the landfill. They checked the camera footage and the tickets of the trucks coming in and out, and narrowed it down to my dad's truck that had unloaded the man. The guy was sleeping in a dumpster. For those who don't know, there's a compactor blade at the back of those trucks to crush the garbage and make more space. He didn't stand a chance. Not me, but I thought I did for almost 2 years. A very close friend of mine, the guy who always seemed to be happy and whom everyone adored. We were hanging out at his house. We were 16 at the time, and for some reason I don't remember, I showed him how to tie a noose knot. 3 days later he was dead. His mom called, saying he had hung himself and it was all my fault. It hit me hard. My friend was dead. I never saw anything coming, and apparently it was even my fault. Almost 2 years later we found out by chance that he had done it with the exhaust fumes from his mom's car. I'll never know why he did it, which still haunts me sometimes, or why his mom blamed me with false accusations, although I could never get angry about that, given the painful situation for her, or how she knew about that stupid knot. I asked my college roommate to drive my car since I was tired. I'm not sure what happened as I was asleep, but he ended up crashing head-on with a vehicle coming from the opposite direction at about 60 to 70 miles per hour. I was the only survivor. His parents were extremely helpful in forcing me to accept that it wasn't my fault, but my heart breaks regularly for his lost potential. He was an amazing guy and would have achieved great things, I'm sure of it. Rock climbing in Nevada. I was belaying the rope. I stopped to sneeze. My friend switched lines prematurely without me giving the approval signal. He fell over 100 feet. I haven't climbed since then. I was 18 years old. I'm 51 now. This never happened to me personally, but my dad drove for Toronto subways and streetcars for 30 years. The number of suicides he's witnessed is staggering. Last month a mother and her newborn jumped. Both died. My dad has always had therapy once a week all my life, and I understand why. Turned out a new coworker lived in the same apartment complex as me across town. She had just moved to the area a few weeks ago. We ended up going together to the midnight showing of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. She was a huge Potter fan. It was great. Suddenly one day, her car was in the shop, so I mentioned at work a shortcut she could take home on her bike. She went that way, and got hit by a drunk driver crossing that other road. She was 26. The guy was doing 75 in a 35 trying to show off his tuned sports car. Sorry for the shortcut, Angie. A crazy drunk guy broke into my house several years ago. He had a knife and was threatening me. My young son and I were the only ones home. I heard noise in my house and grabbed a baseball bat I keep under my bed and went to investigate thinking it was probably nothing. The guy came at me shouting incoherently and almost reflexively I hit him in the head with the bat. I think adrenaline made the hit harder than I thought I was doing. The guy fell immediately. I called 911 and the police arrived quickly, but he was already gone. Skull crushed. I still have nightmares fairly often, but I can't imagine how it would have ended otherwise without me, and possibly my son, being attacked. Survival instincts are strong. I was driving to play a mixed football game at night, first snowfall of the year. I didn't even get out of my own street before suddenly seeing something under my headlights. I didn't have time to stop before hitting it. I don't know why it was lying in the road, but I wish I had noticed earlier so I could have asked. This happened to my uncle in the 1970s. He was coming home from work one night during a snowstorm. He turned onto his street. His house was on the other side of a hill. He went up the hill and, as he started down the other side, he heard kids screaming. The brakes did nothing. He hit a 10-year-old boy who was sledding down the hill in the middle of the road and killed him. He was his next-door neighbor. There were no charges against him. No one sued him, because it was clear it was an accident. Even the boy's parents told him it wasn't his fault. However, my uncle, 53, a combat veteran of World War II from the U.S. Navy in the Pacific War, previously decisive, clear-minded and non-drinker, drank himself to death in less than a year. Tragic in every way. I didn't kill anyone, but I was riding back home with a friend of mine on our bicycles. We were on the highway when an elderly man who didn't check his blind spot changed lanes. He sent my friend towards a guardrail and then into a tree. It severed his spinal cord on impact, leaving him paralyzed from the shoulders down. His lungs were punctured with ribs too. I just had to stand there and listen to him gasping and struggling to take his last breaths on our connected intercoms. This was a hockey accident when I was 19 years old. I'm 36 now. I shot a low kick shot. There was a battle in front of the net. My friend on the other team got shoved, fell, and the puck hit him in the temple and shattered much of the structure. He died later due to bone fragments in his brain. I stopped playing for a long time after that. Now I play in a men's league and wear his number. Edit. I didn't expect to receive tons of comments and direct messages. There are too many to respond to, and really heavy to recall. Emotions I hadn't felt in almost 20 years came up. I'm very grateful for the support. I ask that we show this kind of love to people in person. A close friend of mine died at my house years ago. He had taken Subutex or Suboxone. Unbeknownst to me, I was tired and needed to go to sleep. He wanted us to spend time together, so I smoked some cigarettes with him and we went to the convenience store for a beer. We spent a little more time together and he seemed very drunk, so I put him and his girlfriend's, my roommate's, bed and put on season 3 of House MD and told him goodnight. He ended up overdosing and died in his sleep. A good number of the friend group spiraled down dark paths after that, including myself. At least things are getting better for me now and several others are finally sober. I always felt like he wanted to stay longer so I could keep him alive. It wasn't me. It was my dad a few years before I was born. He was a truck driver, and one late night while on his normal trip between Sydney and Brisbane, a car coming from the opposite direction failed to make a turn. The driver was close to his destination and probably had decided to keep driving despite being tired. My dad had almost 80 tons of truck going at 100 kilometers per hour. He couldn't do anything. The car went under the front of his truck. The driver and his passenger died instantly. The 3 kids of the passenger in the back were trapped, but alive, and awake, and screaming. Being the 90s, my dad had to run to the nearest house to ask for help. When he got to a farmhouse, he had them call emergency services. He couldn't go back to the accident site. The screams were already haunting him. From that moment on, my dad couldn't bear the sound of children crying. It tore my family apart. The actions of an idiot who didn't take a damn nap. My dad still had to drive that route several times a week. I remember seeing him grip the steering wheel so tight every time he approached that curve. I was maybe 16 and had planted a big garden in our backyard. My grandma came over and I was super excited to show her since she loved plants and gardening. She came and started pulling weeds in my garden. One was especially tough to get out. She fell backward and hit her head on a pavement stone. She had a brain bleed and was in a care home not knowing who anyone was and unable to walk or move her hands for the rest of her life. Technically I didn't kill her, but I think the outcome was worse than death. Edit. I just wanted to say thank you for all the support and concern. I did go to therapy after it happened. I know it wasn't my fault. I still garden and still don't pull weeds as much as I probably should. Stupid weeds. I don't know if it's the same. I performed CPR on a man who died. He was the first person I performed CPR on. Since then, I've performed CPR on a baby who died, on a little girl who drowned, and she died, then on an adult woman who survived. It happened to a friend. They were a group of adventure influencers who did a lot of stuff like cliff jumping, cave diving, and filming themselves. They were all strong athletes and very fit. They were trying to do some kind of waterfall jump. One of them slipped or underestimated the current of a cliff diving area, a big mistake. She fell and didn't come back up, being dragged underwater and into a larger pool. Her boyfriend panicked and jumped after her, trying to save her. He didn't come back either. Another friend also dove in, and didn't make it either. The couple who dove eventually had their bodies recovered miles downstream. All 3 died. This was an acquaintance, but there was a drunk guy in the bar provoking them to fight. The guy kept pushing and lightly hitting them, so they went outside. One punch later and the other guy was unconscious, and his head hit a sharp corner of concrete. My wife has a friend who was driving and hit someone on a Lime scooter. The person was drunk and in the wrong lane, so my wife's friend wasn't at fault. She wasn't charged with anything, but the experience was incredibly traumatic, and last I heard she's going through therapy.
I'm in the medical field. I know technically it doesn't count as killing someone, but failing to save someone due to lack of experience, inadequate reaction time, or even choice of medication can feel like you've killed someone. I vividly remember the first patient under my care who unexpectedly died. I prescribed the standard medication and even joked with him as I left the room. 2 hours later, I was in his room as part of the cardiac arrest team. We didn't make it. There were signs that someone more experienced than me at that time might have detected, that for this particular patient, standard care wouldn't be enough. As an older colleague once said, dealing with death gets easier over time, but the day it stops affecting you, you should stop practicing medicine.
My uncle got a new golf cart just to drive around town. My aunt was test driving it with her niece, my cousin, my uncle's daughter, as a passenger. She went up the street into a parking lot and turned around. She accidentally bumped the front wheel against the curb. The golf cart tipped over, throwing her niece, resulting in the golf cart falling on her head. My aunt wasn't the same for several years after that. My whole family showed her so much support and love and assured her that we knew it was an accident. What made everything worse for her was that the court absolutely tore into my aunt. They went after her in every possible avenue: reckless driving, suspended license, nursing licenses revoked, maximum fines they could give. It's a miracle she didn't receive any jail time. For the judge, our whole family and friends made personal statements about how wonderful this woman is. It was an accident. We forgive her. You're worsening the healing process for everyone. They didn't care. And well, friends, that was all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, let me know with a thumbs up so that YouTube can share these stories with more people. Remember to hit the bell icon to be the first to know when we upload a new video. See you next time.